What's up everyone, it's your boy ShowtimeDr coming at you. So this video is going to be your boss killer guide. So characters that excel at killing those bosses with gigantic HP bars in the game, early game. Eventually late game, once you get enough characters and enough gear, etc., you'll be fine killing most things. But early game, you want to cheese some bosses, I'll show you how to do it. So let's go here. So number one, Curious. Curious, long time, I've mentioned this before, she was a very big secret, or not, a sort of secret in the game, because she's a 3-star grass hero that her damage, her overall damage as far as like her attack power and critting and all that, it sucks, it's terrible, it's horrible. For the most part, unless you get some gear that happens to have a bunch of that and debuff accuracy, but, and they've nerfed her a bit, but I won't go over that now. The reason that you get her is because her 3 strengthens your next attack. Once you get a 3rd purple star, it gets you an additional turn. Poison Arrow has the chance to inflict poison to 100%. That's what her 3 does. So her 1 is her Poison Arrow and increase the duration for 3 turns. Corrosive Arrow, the weakening effect extension, increases to 2 turns. So essentially what that's telling you is her 1 is now going to put up 3 poison dots. Poison dots in this game, they tick for a percentage of max health, not current health. So if you have a boss and they have tons and tons and tons of HP, you get that on them, you get 3 stacks of that, you keep stacking additional dots on top of it, you're going to be chunking a good amount of their health, especially early, just because of how fat their HP bar is in proportion to how much damage you can take. So Curious is really good for that. Her 1 is just basically does the same thing at a 35% clip, and it's 1 poison dot instead of multiple. So, also her 2, this is unique in the game, by the way. I haven't seen another character that can do this. Not that there isn't one, I just haven't seen it. Curious attacks all enemies with corrosive arrows. The damage is horrible, but increases the weakening effect on the enemies by 1 turn. Weakening effects are debuffs in this game. So essentially, not only her debuffs, but if you have like a debuff heavy team and you can put on stun, block buffs, attack down, etc., she can extend all of those debuffs. Now, there's a chance, you know, they don't give you exactly what the chance is, but it feels like it's right around like 50%, and then when you upgrade it, it's just upgrading her cooldown reduction and damage, which, to be perfectly honest, you really don't need to do. You have better things to invest in for the most part. And same thing with this one. Getting at the rank 3 to get the increased chance is pretty cool, but rank 5, that's a lot of mats. So I don't necessarily recommend that early game as well. But once again, poison ticks really hard, and that is going to be the theme. So please remember from now on in this video, whenever I talk about poison usually ticks really hard on most bosses. So that's a Curious. If you happen to get her, either in your 10 pool or early game pool, because she's a 3-star, so you're probably going to get her fairly quickly. Keep her in mind whenever you run into a boss that is not fire, that has a ton of health and is hard to take down, etc. Now Alexa, you're going to get a bunch of copies of her. I remember I got like 8 copies of her over like 2 months, or maybe a month and a half or so. So, thing with Alexa, she also puts up poison. Her first attack, though, it is a double sword attack, so basically whenever she crits, she also does another attack, procs once per turn, so can also happen on a follow-up attack. Now, her 2, 3-turn cooldown, attack enemies with cold knives, causing 2 poisoning effects for 2 turns, each with an 80% chance to increase your action gauge by 30%. So not only is she putting poison up, she has a good chance to increase her action gauge, which is basically means her turns coming that much faster. Goes instantly to 30% instead of starting at 0 after her turn. But, check this out. If you soul burn it, which takes 2 soul burns, but if you soul burn it, ignore effect resistance. So, I'm not 1000% sure, because it could be one of 2 things. Either you're ignoring the effect of resistances against poison, just straight up, or you are ignoring the effect of like elemental resistances, because this is a water unit, I believe. Water rogue. So normally water would have less of a chance to put up debuffs on a grass character. But potentially, if you can burn her too, maybe not. You know, maybe she can stack that poison, and then so her and Kyrus together, you know, it'd be kind of a slower DPS team. Like, you'd have a hard time getting through, like, the early mobs that have lower health if you're doing, like, the Eternal Tower or whatever. But once you get to a big fat boss... And actually, Alexa does do enough damage that if you gear her properly, she could do decent damage even without the poison stacks. So, but once again, like I said, poison ticks really hard on things with lots of health. And then her ulti... damage increases in proportion to the number of weakening effects. So once again, the more debuffs you have up, if you got her and Kyrus in the same party, Kyrus is extending the debuffs. Maybe you got Armin as your tank. Armin can put up 3 debuffs, etc. Whoever you're running, keep that in mind. So this is another character, and maybe Kyrus, you know, that's not going to do it for you because it's a fire boss. Okay. Well, here's Alexa. Alexa's going to do bonus... Not only bonus damage to fire bosses, but bonus chance at putting debuffs up even without burning her too. So keep her in mind as well. Now, I actually put secret here. I didn't mean to do that. I'll get to secret in a second, because secret's kind of a special case. We're going to go to Surin now. Now, Surin, I'm actually not sure if she's available on the initial banner, or excuse me, the initial roles. But... even if she's not, make sure you keep this character in mind, because she'll be coming down the pipeline eventually. So, and also, well, I'll mention this right after. Give me a second. Surin attacks the enemy with a chain of sword on her 1. Oh, keep in mind also she is a fire rogue 4-star. Surin attacks the enemy with a chain of sword. If the enemy is inflicted with bleed, inflict 2 bleed effects for 2 turns. So essentially, you can chain stack bleed with her like crazy because she's a rogue. There are relics in the game that give you additional turns at a 10% to 20% clip, etc. There's lots of damage amping rogue artifacts in this game. But essentially, if someone already has a bleed effect on them, put more on, why not? And I'm not sure what the debuff stacking goes to. I believe it's at least 8. But it can be pushed off by buffs as well. I believe it's 8 overall for total. Someone can correct me on that, because I haven't stacked debuffs that high. Anyway, so we're going to get to the 2, blade grinding. The enemy is continuously attacked by a chain sickle and causes 2 to 4 bleed effects for 2 turns. Reduce attack power for 1 turn. So, one thing to note about bleed effects, in my experience, they don't tick as hard as poison, but you can put them up faster with most characters. So essentially, you can get that same damage output without, you know, having the same punch per dot, just because you can put so many up. And then if you soul burn this, you get an additional turn, so that's another chance to put up some more bleeds. Pretty strong. Also, you're reducing attack power for a turn, so that's pretty strong against most characters. Well, all characters, honestly. Alright, and then Implosion explodes all enemies' bleeding effects. The amount of damage increases with the number of bleeding effects on the target. Extend weakening effects. Oh, okay, so she does extend. There's another extender. Extend weakening effect for 1 turn. Increase your action gauge by 15% for each bleeding effect. Applies up to 5 times. When it says explode all bleeding effects, I'm going to have to watch the video that I'm going to link in the description. I'll tell you guys about that in a second. I wonder if that consumes the bleeding effects. Probably doesn't from the way that it sounds. But essentially it's an alt, you explode the bleeding effects, and it extends weakening effects by 1 turn, which is pretty solid. And increases her action gauge 15% for every bleeding effect up to 5 times, so that's up to a 75% turn increase. So if you notice, guys, this character, not only can she pump out the bleeds, but she also can pump her action gauge and proc additional turns, you know, soul consumption, etc. Plus, it's a rogue. You can also put up these, I forget what the card's called, but it's a 10% chance, 5-star relic, to take an additional turn after your turn. So this character's nuts. Honestly, this character's probably the best one overall for bosses in most cases. She is fire, so she's going to have some issues with water. But in most cases. Now, one character to suggest, if you have a Surin, This is just an amp character, is Secret. Secret on her own, she's a 5-star water unit as well. So the thing about Secret, I'll tell you guys, she will probably be available on the first banner. That's the way that it happened in Korea after the initial reroll process, because she was the first person that was on the banner. I believe I was a little bit late. She might be on the second banner, but keep her in mind. Since I just went over Surin with you, keep her in mind. So Honor 1, it's a single target, but has a decent chance to put 25% chance to apply 2 bleed effects for 2 turns. You can get that chance up to 35%. That'll also come into play not only with follow-up attacks, but with her 2. I will show you why. Attack the target with a sickle in succession, apply heal block and bleed effects with a 85% chance. So this is a higher chance to put up a bleed effect here for 2 turns. If the target's health is 50% or lower, below after the attack, Secret will additionally use Cut. Cut is her 1. So you got another chance to put up some bleed effects there. Now, also if you soul burn it, which honestly usually you don't want to do, she gets an additional turn. There's usually better heroes to do it on, but Secret's still a really good DPS hero. And you can upgrade, increase the chance for bleed effects as well. But one of the reasons, the main reason, not only the bleed stacking, because I'm sure Surin could keep bleeds up by herself, but the main reason I would bring Secret with Surin, if you can roll 2 DPS, is her ulti here, and I'll show you why. Guillotine. Deals a fatal attack to the enemy's weak point and penetrates the target's defenses by 10% for each weakening effect. What that means is she is ignoring armor by 10% for every weakening effect that is on the enemy. So bleeds, poison, attack down, stun, etc. All of that becomes she's ignoring armor. And the higher you get it, not sure how high the debuffs can go, but the higher you get it, you know, she's ignoring more armor. This can hit hella hard if you got her geared right. And by the way, I forgot to mention it before, make sure all these characters, when you're building them, have a healthy amount of debuff accuracy. You are going to need debuff accuracy to be able to defeat most people's resistances, etc. Because it changes depending on what you're fighting, if you're fighting your elemental weakness, etc. But she'd be a good hero to run with Surin in those cases, because Surin covers the fire aspect, but then Surin can also make it so that she can't be resisted, at least on her 2. And then you can have Secret cover the water aspect, so if you need to damage a fire unit, etc., that'll be there for you. And no, actually I wasn't going to go over that hero. So yeah guys, those are your boss killing heroes. I'm going to put a link to a friend's video, Kelpo Delpo from the Discord. He's actually the person that gave me Surin. As you can see, it's clipped out there, but you can kind of see it. I'll leave the link to this video. He is running, looks like Surin, Akatus, that crazy cloud waifu with the boobs I wish I had, and one of the healers I don't have. Looks like a Moonlight version. But I'm going to plug that, because he worked really hard editing it and stuff, so you can go check that out to see how good Surin is. Once again, I'm not sure if Surin's even available early game, as far as the banners initially, but eventually if you happen upon one, remember this, and remember Surin's a boss killer. So, and that's your boss killer guide, guys. Now, you can still kill bosses traditionally, you know, with typical setups and heroes and stuff. But I'm just telling you, there are a lot of situations in this game that you really have to adjust your heroes strategy-wise, because everything doesn't work on everybody. It's just the way it is. So even dots and debuffs don't work on everybody. There's a holy boss that cleanses herself every turn, so dots and debuffs don't work. She cleanses herself before the dot even ticks, so it kind of sucks. And there's also heroes that, like, they're so fast that even if you put a dot up for 2 turns, the dots will tick off naturally before you'll get the chance to do an additional turn follow-up to either explode the dots or whatever, extend the dots, etc. So keep all that in mind. Attack speed works out well for that as well. So anyways, guys, that's your boss killer guide, boss killer heroes guide. Yo, I'm ShowtimeDr, ShowtimeDr. You found my YouTube. Consider hitting like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content. Also, check the title notes. There's a link to Kelpo Delpo's video. Kelpo Delpo! Also, there's a link to my Discord. You can come in, share your experiences, ask questions, etc. We've got a good community. And there's a link to my Twitch, twitch.tv/ShowtimeDr. I'll be streaming this later on. It's opening day. Hopefully it won't lag too bad. Catch you guys later. Peace out.